that monk there is the Oregonian who I said chased the mountain lion away.
Ah.
Yeah. You met him up there earlier too.
Yeah, I met him up there.
I told him that we had an Oregonian here who chased a mountain lion away when he came down to the cloister area.
Well, it's kind of funny looking back, but I wasn't so much chasing him away as like just so excited to see him that we just ran after him. Didn't really think
But it wasn't really running away, like it wasn't scared.
it was. No, it stopped at one point, like 50 feet away from us, and just turned around and looked at us.
Yeah, like the black bears where I am, right? You chase them away and then run off a little bit and look back. But mountain lions are just ghosts in Virginia. Everybody's seen one, but they haven't, there's no photographs or anything. It's just that shadow that jumped across the road in the middle of the night, and that's one. Gotta be one, right? No more mountain lions. Even bobcats are really hard to find. I've seen a couple, but not many. But they do hunt a lot. People hunt around there, and this is hunting season. This is the middle of hunting season right now. So all of the deer have learned that they can hang around in the monastery and be safe. So we have a larger and larger population of deer every year. To the point where they're almost like pets. They don't run away at all. But the bears are afraid of human beings because of the hunters too, right? And they hunt with dogs there. Have you seen that? I don't know if but they hunt with these hound dogs that just chase them and treat them. Right? And they use radio collars, you see. So they just sit in their pickup trucks and drinking beer, and then they follow them with and they follow the collars. And sometimes they lose them. So they end up, and there's a law in Virginia that you are allowed to go on anybody's property without permission if you're hunting for your dog, if your dog gets lost. So oftentimes we used to get them in the past, not so much these days, but they'd come in the monastery looking for their dog, right, and all geared up, and just following the signal, right. So we got to the point where all the collars have a tag on them with a phone number. So if one of them came through, we come on, we give them some food and tie them up and call the number, come and get your dog. Otherwise, they're roaming all over the property, right? You get hunters hunting in these mountains?
I don't think we've ever had hunters come through here. Yeah.
Is there a hunting season for? What
yeah.
do they hunt?
Yeah.
They're hunting deer hunting, I guess.
Yeah, your shots every now and then.
Yeah. There, it's like a tradition. Everybody, who goes in the rural communities anyway. The nicest guys in the world, but they all go out. Hunting season.
I was wondering when I walked in what the question was that answer was to. And I love the solution of getting the dog, reading the tag, because where I live we have, I think probably the largest deer population up in Utah. Mm-hmm. I do pet them. I mean, I don't pet them, but I feed them to the point. So, but there's also hunting allowed, but only limited residential, and not everybody listens to that. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see them in the village, and you know them because of their camo, and we talk about it, I work at the store there. So anyways, it worried me at first, for sure, when I started meeting the hunters up there. How do they know where not to shoot the deer? Because the deer are outside my window most days,
Well, if it's private property, you should be able to post it.
Yeah.
And that's what you do in Virginia.
Yeah, and there is no question about it where I am, but where my dad's cabin is, it's much more open. Mm-hmm. And anywhere up there where it's open, you just have to assume that the person inside also has a gun. So if you come around with a rifle and start shooting randomly at deer,
Mhm.
no guarantee that that person's not going to come outside and shoot back. So
Mhm.
that's not our solution because we feed the deer, and fortunately you can tell it's residential. They're not allowed to
Mhm.
hunt there.
Yeah.
Ajahn, I have a question directly relating to the deer, but of a different sort. Have you said nice guys, I heard, nice guys really, and everyone hunts, and I'm familiar with that, but
Everyone's a nice guy for me, but go ahead.
I beg to differ. But so, I'm a nanny for truly lovely parents. I just diffused at Ajahn when he needed to go into puja about it.
Mhm.
And then the father, I've been around a lot of children. These are truly delightful children, and they may have come with really amazing barami,
Mhm.
and I consider it my incredible karma to be there. They're loving and bright, and I've been around a lot of children.
Mhm.
And then he said he was a hunter, and so I do love this, and I feel like I have a place. They call me Mary Poppins, and he said he learned more from me than his half hour with his therapist, and I said that does not speak well for you. You need to pay real money for a good therapist. But so then he said something like, well, maybe you could talk to your friends near your land, and I could come shoot a deer, right? I mentioned something about wanting more protein for skeletal muscle. And I have a solution for that, he said, right?
Mhm.
I do eat meat. But so I want to, it's going to come up. He also fishes. He asks me to come watch the children so they can go out on the big boat. And have you ever had a situation where it felt skillful to ask, I don't know what to ask, but I wonder what it is to him when does he feel something when he pulls the trigger? They're beautiful animals.
Mhm.
They're beautiful. When you come in and they're very gentle, and you do pull that trigger, right? There is a
Mhm.
moment where you take that life away.
Mhm.
And I wonder if there would be a way to cultivate and say my meditation a question, a curiosity for what is his mind state and how does he deal with that later in the day, and it's going to come up.
Yes, but trying to figure out somebody else's mindset is not going to help you. You've got a big job on your hands to figure out your own mindset, and that's the focus you want to have. If you want to understand somebody else's mindset, you've got to figure out your own mind first, and through that, then you'll begin to understand. Because there's something of that in all of us. If we were born in that situation with parents who were hunting all the time, in a community where it was a tradition, we would grow up hunting. And it might take us some time before we actually start to reflect on that about ourselves. But, it's in everyone. And we're talking about karmic past, which is basically endless. So we don't know how many lifetimes we've been through and different situations in which we've been the aggressor or the victim, whichever. So there's an understanding of all of that inside us if we can reach that point. And that's the way to make progress on that issue. Not to sit around and wonder what's going on in his mind. Go inside your own mind, figure out all the stuff that's going on in your mind, right? I mean, for most of us, it's a jungle in there. It's hard enough to make part the jungle and make a path through for ourselves. But by doing that, we learn about the mind in a general sense, that there was something we all share that we can begin to understand. And by doing that, if we can overcome those tendencies in ourselves, then when we see others, we really feel compassion for them because we've been there and we found a way through and we found a way out. And they could do the same if they could only look in the right place. So there's, if you hadn't gone through your own mind you might feel sorry for them, you might feel pity for them, but there's no real power in feeling sorry and feeling pity for people. But compassion is very powerful. It's something that comes from having overcome these defilements in oneself and seeing how they operate in other people and understanding, I've been there, I know that, and I also know the way out. If they could only see that, if they could only understand it. You can't force them to see it, but you can coax them perhaps to start looking. Because oftentimes they just don't bother to look. If you grow up in that kind of community, you don't think about it.
Yeah, I was going to just send him some, not even touch it, just sidestep his wanting to use a friend's land to just, that's easy to avoid having that come up again, because I don't know how I would skillfully answer that, because it's not that I couldn't do it, it's that I feel uncomfortable being, right? But I was just going to send him Dharma talks, because he's such a lovely, and he's German, he's from Bavaria, and lovely human being. And I don't feel sorry for him. I have confidence that he'll just keep getting nicer and nicer. So I'll just send him Dharma talks, and then who knows? I'll laugh when he asks me again and say, "No, I'm Buddhist. I can't help you kill a cute little animal," and just laugh it off like that, and then send him Dharma talks.
No, I mean you can definitely explain to him why you're not going to help him find a place to go shoot animals. That's and that's probably something he should hear. But trying to figure out what's going on in his mind.
Yeah,
is,
thank you for that. Thank you. That's a, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Ajahn, I wonder if just advice for new aspirants. We've got these three here on your right who are going to be taking bhikkhu ordination on December 4th. And, what sort of advice do you normally give for new aspirants or getting ready to take bhikkhu ordination, take that next step?
Yeah. It's a long time ago. I don't know when I did that. I don't know. It just seemed to happen naturally. But it was definitely difficult for me. So, I mean, there's so many basics that you need to work on. Don't get ahead of yourself and think of, attaining this, attaining that, getting, certain advanced states of practice or expectations of, my meditation should be good like this, or it should be good like that. I have aspirations in terms of ambitions. Ambition can easily get in your way. Ambition can lead to disappointment because you put your all your energy into attaining a certain goal, and in your mind you have a vision of what that goal and what that attainment will be. Right? So you're aiming for something, and it never comes out. Whatever you gain is never going to equal what's in your imagination. Your imagination gets in the way because it creates a kind of false goal or aim in a practice. So you have to take it one day at a time. You have to take it each day, and progress a little bit each day. Try to get the basics down each day. Keep working on simple things to begin with. Don't make it, and don't overthink it. Think enough to get what you have to do done, and then let your mindfulness and your other practices sort of kick in and take over. So that the thinking goes to the periphery and your attention is focused on what you're doing. Right? So you've limited your focus down to what you're doing. It may be sweeping the grounds, it may be doing any kind of work, it may be eating in the morning, and things like that. Whatever it happens to be. Keep your mind on that and let everything else sort of drift off to the side. It's going to keep encroaching again and again and again, and so you're going to have to keep sort of gently pushing it off to the side until you have enough strength to start elbowing it off to the side, which it comes with time. But, patience is a virtue. Be patient and be willing to put up with the hardship and difficulties that come. And don't see them as a negative. See them as an opportunity for growth. So hardships are a challenge. So when you're presented with a challenge, you need to have the right kind of vitality and that's mental vitality, right? Spiritual vitality. To hold the line, at the very least, or to push through if you can, right? But not to let the hardships become a burden that you can't carry. And so then you slip back. So expect things to be difficult. Those expectations are important. Anticipate that there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to deal with that are a challenge. And that way you don't become disappointed when they suddenly come up or appear to come up, when just the time when you were getting down to practice and had high hopes for them. So.
Thank you.
But, there are a lot of really basic, we tend to get ahead of ourselves. Don't want to get stuck at a basic level. We've kind of been trained like that. Really need to just slow down and focus on the things that are important and learn which things are important. And some of that's just experience. You watch what your mind is doing during the day and what works and what doesn't work and what allows you to keep your attention there. And the things that tend to big distractions that come in that pull your mind away. So experience is a really good teacher. And that's happening all the time. All the time. It's more experience, you're adding that up. And out of that, grows probably, in terms of practice anyway, a kind of common sense. As you're moving towards gaining more wisdom or discernment, you just understand how things work, cause and relationship between things, and you work with that, right, as part of your practice. So, and that's happening with everything you do. There's a way you could do it, which is going to get the results that you want. If you just clean a cup, there are many ways to clean a cup, but there's probably one that you see that's going to work really well for cleaning cups, right? And every cup's going to be different because every cup has something else in it. So you learn to clean the cup in many different ways, depending on how dirty it is and what's making it dirty. Just for an example. But everything is like that. Look at that item that you're going to work with, and look at it what it's like now, right? And look at it what it needs now, right? And then work. And don't just become sort of mechanical. I do this every day, so I can do it with my eyes closed. When your eyes are closed and your mind's spinning, and then it gets done, but it may be a half-assed job, but it's okay. Make every little thing important. Right? Nothing is so insignificant that it doesn't deserve your attention. Right? So there's a lot of attention to detail in this forest tradition practice, right back to Ajahn Mun in the early days. Mm-hmm.
Tanjan has been rereading a bit of Uncommon Wisdom, the book on Nalapurpanivada.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently read about his cremation and the light that was there. I was wondering if you were there, or if you had any reflections on that experience, if you were there.
I was there, yes. I was there. It was a bright, clear day. There was not a cloud in the sky, There was, blue sky, no, it was very dry. So not a lot of humidity in there. It actually happened 3 times. And we were all under the roof of a very large sala, where all the monks were sitting, and there were thousands of them, really thousands of them. Somebody, said 5,000 or 6,000 monks, besides all the lay people from all over, and mostly Thai monks, but there was a contingent from what Baranachan was about 50 monks had come from that. So we couldn't see this guy. But there was suddenly oohing and eyeing, and so we're trying to figure out what's going on. And I was pointing to the sky. And so we didn't see the first time it happened. So it happened 3 times. And then the second time, the part of the ceremony is that the casket is sitting ready to be cremated. There's a kind of a crematorium or a funeral pyre, but it's actually made into, it looks like a building, right? It looks like a small building with roof over it, and the fire is lit underneath. There's it's almost like a furnace underneath. So but the casket sits there, and the monks take maijan. What is maijan? It's teak. It's
Maisak is teak. Maijan.
It's that very aromatic
Sandalwood.
And they take shavings of it, and they make it into what looks like kind of like a flower. So they shave it really thin, and each monk will place one of these on the casket that's going to be burned. And sort of lie and put this down. So the whole line of monks. So all of us were out there when it happened the second time, because this was out from under the roof. And somebody then pointed up, and we all looked up, and it was hard to describe. You've seen the pictures in there, so it's huge. It covered just circular, and the sun was in the middle, but it wasn't that bright somehow. And around the edges, there was a ring, and it was almost like a cloud ring, but it had the colors of the rainbow in it. So it was like, wow. And so we all watched that, but we had to keep moving through the line and come back in. But the third time, Lunta Mahabua went to light the fire. And that's when it happened. Oh, the first time. So the first time we were all on the roof, and somebody was reading his biography, Ajahn Panya's biography, both in English and in Thai. And that's when it happened the first time. But we didn't see it because we were sitting underneath. So the second time, when all of us went out to put these sandalwood flowers on the casket. Third time was when Lungta Mahabua went and lit the fire at the funeral pyre. And it happened third. In which case we were all out standing around at the same time. I cannot explain to you what or why. It happened spontaneously, and as I say, it was a clear day with no other clouds in the sky, basically. It is a phenomenon that Thais have a name for. So it's not that it's never happened before, but it was considered very auspicious that it happened, and particularly that it happened 3 times on a clear day, and a very hot day. It was really hot. But the Thais would say parami of. So that's good enough for me. Sure.
I've been practicing for 10 years now, and for the first time today today, this morning, while practicing, I fainted. It's never happened to me. And it wasn't like physical exhaustion or anything. In fact, I was having trouble focusing the last 2 days because I'm coming from the outside, and this morning was the first time I had a really good session, I thought, because I was able to focus on my body and breathing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And my worry is, when I try to focus, I'm now afraid I'm going to faint again. And how do I get over it? Like, what can I encourage myself to not be worried about it, but still do my best during meditation?
Now, when you fainted, was that a very uncomfortable experience?
It was actually very relaxing. I was feeling very safe, and I didn't mind.
Okay, well then what's to worry about then? Even if it happens again, that's the worst that can happen.
Yeah.
Right? It's even said that the Buddha himself fainted and passed out several times, and also with some of the Ajahn Mun and some of the Krupa Ajahns in Thailand. The monks in Thailand also have had that kind of experience, usually from exertion and not just in a relaxed sort of way, which is a little more scary. But this sounds like you know.
Yeah, I felt very safe.
Yeah, very safe.
It feels like home for me.
Yeah.
But
Let's keep going.
But going deep inside, there is this hesitation. There is this, oh, I remember all those experiences, and I'm afraid to.
Yeah, I know. That's big disadvantage to anybody who is doing meditation, to keep bringing the past in to the present and remembering, oh, it was like this. It was like, sometimes it was a very good experience in meditation. So you want to recreate that now. You try really hard. You remember, what did I do the last time I meditated, right? Well, what you did the last time you meditated, your mind was right in the present. It wasn't going anywhere. It was right focused on your meditation object. Now you're trying to drag in, a memory from the past, and it doesn't. Your mind is no longer in the present. It's only partially in the present. It's partially in the past. But the same with your situation. Just let the past be, and find out. I bet you overcome it quite quickly, by just staying in the present, and you'll be more aware of when it may initiate, when you may start feeling that wooziness or whatever it is before you sort of drop off, right? And then that's the time to be more vigilant in your practice. Yeah. Okay, hold it right there. Don't let it fall. Hold it right there. It's a good point right there. So don't let it go too far.
I'd be curious, if I may ask, to what extent does one have to let go? Like normally the lifestyle sauna, for example, I've been wondering how much of my individuality, my personal interests can I keep, and how much do I basically submit to the training, to the tradition, and is there a way to balance those things?
Yeah, no, that's it's what I was saying a minute ago. You're overthinking it. The more you think like the more you tie yourself in knots, right? No, and letting go is kind of interesting. And Ajahn Panya used to say, if you let go of one thing, you're going to just grab a hold of something else, right? And you're not in other words, you're not in a position to let go. You can't will it. You can't will yourself to let go. Because that grasping is there. If you release your grasp here, it's not grasping over here or over here. He used to say it's like an ant that climbs up the wall and goes across the ceiling and wants to get back to the floor again. All it has to do is let go. And it'll be there in So, yeah, I mean, and also, letting go happens when you understand that you're holding on to something and there's actually nothing there. There's no substance of what you're holding on to. With that understanding, the letting go happens naturally. That you don't have to force it, you don't have to will it, you don't have to, what should I be letting go of? It comes with the territory of meditation, that when you see clearly that what you're clinging to is just thin air, then the letting go happens on its own. So you don't have to think about it. You don't have to wonder about where to let go and where not to let go. And there may not be as big a difference between those two things that you mentioned, the practice and your whatever personal. There may not be as big a difference between them as you think there is. Right? It looks like there's a big divide now, right? And you have to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and mix them together to have a unique sort of. But we're all unique anyway, so you don't really have to even create that. It's gonna be there as part of the practice. But there's certain good things about you and yourself. You begin to recognize certain really beneficial things that are going to take you a long way. Right? You have certain talents, you have certain mental qualities that are well enough developed that you can rely on them. There are going to be other mental qualities that are very weak. So you begin to recognize these are the ones I can rely on, but I got to pull the other ones along and bring them up to speed, right, at the same time. So you're working with your strengths just to strengthen up your weaknesses too, so that all of these mental qualities then have a balance. You find the balance in that way inside yourself, and you'll be on the path then, right? Mm-hmm. When I came this time, came with Billy here, and so he arranged for me to stay at City of 10,000 Buddhas down the road there in Ukaya. They just opened up after 2 years and 7 months of being completely closed. They just opened up, a week before, and we were the first overnight visitors they'd had in 2 years and 7 months.
Oh, that's auspicious.
They thought so. But they have a tradition, right? I mean, this is the Chan tradition from Master Hua, and then who is it? Reverend Reverend Hang Shu. And Reverend Hang Shu has a couple of young disciples. One 10 years, one 13 years.
Jin Chuan, Jin Wei.
Yes. And with Hang Shu's encouragement, they've decided to reinstitute or develop, however you want to look at it, a forest tradition inside their, which City of 10,000 Buddhas is a big city. About 350 people live there, and they just chant all day long. That's their practice. I was told that there's a program there of ceremonies, and ceremonies go from this tonight. But they want to develop the forest side of the tradition. I mean, that's the meditation side of the tradition, right? The ancient, because there's a lot of ancient mountains and wilderness in the Chan practice in the ancient, and that's kind of been lost. And it turns out that back in 1991, maybe, Master Hua bought 500 acres of redwood forest in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And it's been sitting there ever since. 500 acres of all, and we were just there. It is nothing but redwoods, right, from top to bottom.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. And so they're trying to develop that now into a forest monastery and they call it Redwood Vihara. Yeah. Redwood Vihara. And and they bought a house which happened to be next door because there weren't really any buildings on the property. And then they're turning the house into what you have here, basically, but doing it in a simple way by using the house. They're using the garage as the meditation hall. They converted the garage into a meditation hall because it's still a garage according to the zoning and everything like that. You see, they don't have to change the zoning. They just it was a big 2-car garage, and they just extended it out and closed it in and put the Buddha Rupa up here and have seats like this, and everybody can come and meditate. And then the house has rooms in it. Quite a nice old wooden house. So they've been developing this. I went down because they asked me to go down, and they wanted to know how we practice in the forest. You know, all the practices that the Thai forest does, because they don't really have those preserved, the different kind of practices. So it was interesting to see that they're moving back to an ancient tradition that we share, in a sense, that Chinese and the Thai and probably all Buddhist traditions grew out of the wilderness. And now they've seen the value in that. So we had long discussions about how to adapt their practice, because they want to maintain their own ancient practices too. It's not that they want to, but they want to incorporate some of what we do into those so that it fits well. Because when your meditation practice is just chanting ceremonies all day long, you don't have a very good basis with an object, a personal object that you can work with, like the breath. Right? So they need to work on all of these different kind of meditation practices. We talk about the Dhutanga practices, which are also very much at the heart, at the core of the Thai forest tradition, and how they can be adapted to their needs as well. And so it ended up, we went for Pindapat. Pindapat is alms round. And the closest little hamlet is about 7 miles away. So they'd never done it before. I said, let's go. All 4 of us went into town. When they have bowls, we have bowls. And we explained the whole, how we do it, right? Right from the time we're here and we're cleaning our bowls and getting everything ready, and then went into town and parked at one end of the street and we walked all the way. Basically, the whole town is on one road. It's Route 9, I think, going through town, isn't it? Yeah, so there's Route 9 and there's shops on either side and some houses. So we walked one in, came back. Of course, nobody knows what we're there for. Somebody's seen this before. But we're coming back, and there's a group of people sitting we haven't received anything by that time, there's people sitting outside a coffee shop. And so we walk through and kind of say hi to everybody, and then as we go by, this one woman asked one of our guys, what were they doing there? And so he said, you can offer them something, One guy said, I got some money, you want that? And he said, no, they prefer something to eat. Okay, so this woman was, all she had was some peppermint balls. Like that size, right? All wrapped up. So she ran out. With tears in her eyes, she was putting peppermint balls in But we kind of primed the pump by having our guys standing at one street corners and waiting and putting, so that people would see what we were up to. By the time we got to her, she would put. The second day we got another guy. We got two guys. We got one lady and another man who was also at the same coffee shop. He gave something. But then he's the husband of the woman, who's a woodworker. And he does a lot of artwork, kind of woodwork. And he said, I've made an Om out of wood, right? O at the top and the M at the bottom. And I want to offer it to the monks. And if they need anything, woodworking up there, I'm an expert woodworker. I'll go up and offer it. So already, just by walking a couple of times through the community, more and more people are becoming interested. And that's the ancient way of our tradition. When that tradition from India went to China, there was some stigma involved with begging,
right, exactly.
and so it never really developed. And most of these Chan monasteries were so far up in the mountains that there was nowhere to walk to anyway, I think. So that was another part of it, but it never did develop there. So they want to develop, these two monks. And they're going to try to go as often as they can and establish it as a practice there, which is pretty impressive.
I was there earlier this year. It's pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. The forest is amazing.
Ajahn Dick, have you or any of your monks done any Tudong in America?
There's one of our monks, several have been, but one of them had just spent a month. He came back a few days ago, I heard. But he left and walked on the Appalachian Trail. And at a certain point, maybe 50, 60 miles from us, there's a hostel. Along the way, there are hostels. And we got to know some of the people who run the hostels. And they say if the monks come, along, then, they can camp anywhere up on the trail or off the trail, and then walk down every morning and receive alms and take it back up and eat it. So he's been doing that at some of the hostels. One in particular at the end of which we have a very good relationship with the people that run it, and they come to see us from time to time too, and offer an invitation because he has to get that far too. So he needs to be able to receive alms periodically, at least. Hopefully every day, but at least periodically. And there are people on the way who, if they know he's coming, they'll make the effort because if you're up on the trail, the nearest location when you come down would be a parking lot where people park to go hiking, right? So oftentimes, instead of he tried it before by coming all the way down into the town and receiving food there at a Thai restaurant or something like that, and he would get some food from them and walk. It was often 5 miles down and 5 miles back up. That's kind of how it started with a monk who's did this before. The first one who did this. It's in some ways it's a hospitable environment. People there, they talk about Southern hospitality. Even just, the local people, rural people, if they see somebody walking along that looks like they need help, they'll stop and they ask, do you need anything? And if you say, well, I'm hungry, then they say, well, you're hungry, and they reach in the back and pull out a loaf of bread or something, put it in a bowl. we found that a lot with monks who've been doing this. And it requires a certain amount of, I guess you'd call it boldness, to go off alone and not know whether you're going to get any food or not. If it's in Thailand, you can be pretty sure that if you come to a village somewhere that they're going to put something in your bowl. But here, you could walk for days and not get anything if you didn't. I mean, there's always that danger. So when they leave the monastery, they just walk out of the monastery and walk off into the mountains, and have in their mind plan where they're going to try to come down and find somebody who will offer them food. But there is that, challenge to it. That if you're not confident in yourself that you can handle it, whether you get food or not, then you better not go. But at the same time, that part of that confidence is that you are doing something really good and beneficial in your practice. And there's a certain amount of merit that you've made in that effort, and there's a certain amount of worthiness to receive that comes from that, right? And part of the confidence comes from that, too.
You translated the Longpo Cow biography?
That was Ajahn Panya.
Oh, that was Ajahn Panya.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
he translated that.
Did you ever cross paths with Longpo Cow?
Just to pay respects to him, because his monastery was not too far from where I was. But he was very old then. I mean, he was probably in his 90s.
Oh,
so he didn't. You could go and pay your respects, and that was about it. But he didn't speak a lot. He didn't. By nature, he didn't speak a lot anyway. But then he was really very, very elderly. Lumpu Wan, I went to see Lumpu Wan also. I mean, a lot of these really old, elderly monks, looks at disciples of Ajahn Mun, were illiterate, basically, and they were not particularly articulate when it came to teaching, particularly just small talk. If there's an opportunity between two Ajahn level who want to really get deep into practice, and then they perked up. Right? But normally, because in Thailand they're revered so much, there busloads of people come and they all then pay respects and then mill around and then they leave. And so they're not too enthusiastic about speaking with them. But if another monk comes who really has done the practice and is deep in the practice, then they perk up and then the real discussion takes place.
Ajahn, do you do any more translations these days, or that's?
I've been working on one of Ajahn Jia. I don't know if anybody knows of Jia.
Yeah, that's a Thai man translated.
Thai man translated it, yeah, and it's kind of messy translation. And a couple of, Westerners, Australians or something, edited part of it. It sort of is edited by, from here on, edited by so-and-so, and then maybe a little bit later somebody else was editing. It didn't help very much. If you check the translation, it's not complete. It's paraphrased. A lot of it's just paraphrased. So there's a lot of detail that's left out of it. And some of that detail is in the Dhamma talk, in the Dhamma parts of it. What I would say if you read the Ajahn Mun bio. So there's a story, but that's a lead-in to a Dhamma talk, basically, right? This exemplifies this Dhamma part of Dhamma that I'm going to talk about. And a lot of that got sort of left out or truncated, right, abbreviated stuff. And those were the more important parts of the book. So it's been a little bit of a challenge to work with that, and to bring in the original Thai as well. And
You to reorder it or?
reordering, that's the other thing, because this took place because when he was very old and unwell, a group of Thais went to him with a tape recorder and microphone, and I think it was actually videotaped, and asked him, "Can you please tell us about your life while you're still alive?" So he just started talking, and it came out. Sort of starting at the beginning, but like anybody, you're trying to remember things, and you go along and you remember, you go back because you'd forgotten something happened here, and you go forward again. He kind of comes back and forth, and sometimes he jumps way into the future and talks about something that happened after he ordained. And my feeling is, well, that's a little early. Why don't we take that and put that where he ordained, so we don't introduce that too quickly to people who, English-speaking people, may not know exactly what that means either, right? A lot of things he takes for granted, where he lives in a lot of Thai culture and traditions and things that maybe an English-speaking reader wouldn't understand if you didn't give a little added. Doesn't have to be much, but some things it's sort of bridge some of these gaps. So the first thing I did was chronologically reorder the beginning part of it, up until the time he ordained. So it flowed more naturally. And that took some time. And that's really storytelling. A lot of that is storytelling because he's still young and very, bit of a troublemaker.
Was Luang Por and Luang Da Mahabua, were they close?
They were really close. They were really close, but not close. They didn't see each other very often, but when they did, but they had been very close from the time they stayed with Luang Por Man. And so, and Ajahn Dick really respected and revered Luang Da. Almost, he would say it's almost as if he were Luang Por Man. So he had a lot of respect for him. And Luang Da Mahabua had a lot of influence on Ajahn Dick's more wilder side, if you will. Right? I mean, he was, so they had a very good relationship.
So there's a photo I've seen of Ajahn Jia visiting Bantad. And he's up on the asana with Luang Da Mahabua, and Ajahn Jia has an eye patch on, I believe. And Ajahn Jia is talking to the lay people. Luang Da Mahabua is looking at Ajahn Jia with what I would describe as like a look of admiration. And it just made me think that they had a close relationship.
He used to come, from time to time. And the one time I remember in particular, he arrived late at night, probably 10, 11 o'clock at night, and there's a gate. The gate's always locked at dusk. And so he just got out of the car and told the driver to go. And the gate was actually designed by Ajahn Panya. And the wall was actually designed by him. There's a wall around it to keep villagers out, hunters out, and things like that. And wild animals who also hunt, inside the wall. And there's a gate, big metal gate, goes up, I don't know, it must be 8 or 9 feet, and then has these rods that come over like this and pointed on the end to prevent people from climbing over the gate, right? And there was barbed wire strung along the rods that came in. Oh my God. And so, we come down, he had them leave him at the gate, he got out, they drove off, it was the middle of the night. Next morning we come down at dawn, and he's sleeping there on the floor in the Buddha room, right, just stretched out with the Sangati as a pillow, right? And he had climbed over the gate, and he was in his 70s, right? Probably mine. Climbed over the gate, and as I say, it makes an arc like this. And he somehow climbed over and through the barbed wire and down the other side. And he walked up.
He wasn't cut up or anything?
He didn't look cut up to me. No. But it was like just normal for him. Like, he didn't think anything of it. He didn't think it was anything particular. There's a gate there, I have to climb it, and then you do it. The rest of us, we get hung up on how are we going to look at this way and look at that way. But he just starts climbing, and when he gets up there, he figures it out.
Ajahn Dick, I forgot. Do you know Nippon well?
I lived with him for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
You know Ajahn Nippon well.
We visited him in the end of January for the first time.
Oh, really? Yeah. That had a lot of influence on me. That before I came here, I was staying with him. Before I started Forest Dhamma in Virginia, I was staying with him for 3 years, and I got a lot of good ideas from him, a lot of help from him, and he's powerful. As monks go, he's powerful. Don't know how else to say it.
I have an experience through my visit. It's very unusual.
Yeah. And I don't know, you know the Buddha Rupa we have, that sort of white jade, that was his, and he gave it to us.
Well, I've heard that there's a long story, but I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Tell me the long story.
No, I was going to hope, if the opportunity arises, that you would tell the long story.
But maybe I don't know the long story. Maybe
okay, tell us the short version if you know.
Short version is showed up on our doorstep. But obviously it comes from Burma, because the white jade, there's only one place in one mountain in Burma where they quarry this. And this weighs 5 tons, 10,000 pounds. One piece, 10,000 pounds. That I know. Now, how it got, because it seems to me that it was with another monk before Ajahn Nippon sent it to us, that one of his disciples, or one of his close associates, had it. See, it started off, he said, let's say he collects jade Buddhas, and I mean big jade Buddhas, not small jade Buddhas. And he has a real talent for finding them, and then he has some artisans up in Chiang Rai that do a really good job with them, right? I've been there, big pieces, big as this room, just sitting on the ground, and you go, wow, how is that going to be turned into? And somehow they have they have the boldness or the courage to just start chipping away at it, and then it comes out like Buddha. But so he was going to give us a green jade. Most of it's green jade. Most of the jade there is green jade. And he had planned to give us a green jade Buddha of a certain size. I forget it, maybe 7 feet from ground to top. So when we built the sala, we had the Buddha room, let's say, like this. We had the ceiling high enough so that it would accept that size. And then we start building. At a certain point, he had one of his disciples sent an email saying he'd found the white jade Buddha, and he thought it'd be better, more suitable for us than the green jade Buddha. Would I agree? And of course I immediately agreed. And so that's where the switch took place between that. And he'd found that, I think, somewhere. That wasn't one that he had started with him, and gone to the artisan in Chiang Mai. I think that one, he knew someone who had it. There's another monk who had it. So it was already complete. So, and that one was 8 foot 4 inches or something. So we still could get it into the same room, which was nice. He also was going to send us a lot of wood products, a lot of paneling, wood paneling, like the teak wood paneling. And I mean stacks and stacks. It was enough to clad the whole solid building. I mean, it wasn't small. I actually saw it. And spindles for the railing. Big spindles like this, made of Maidang. Some it's also red wood, but not the same red wood as here, but it's very hard wood. And several other things that he was going to send along. And he was collecting them together. And the Buddha Rupa was going to come with all the wood in one big shipment. Then the coup took place. I guess it was 2014. And the military took over, and they started closing the export of timber products from Thailand. And so he couldn't get permission to ship all of it. I mean, it wasn't a small amount, so he couldn't get permission to ship it out. And he kept waiting before he sent the Buddha Rupa, because he wanted to send them both together. And by 2015 and something, and I kind of tried to gently encourage him, to just send the Buddha image along, because we're building now, and we had to close in the roof on this roof here. We had to put that on because we couldn't keep it. So by the time it did come, the roof was already on, and so we couldn't. With 5,000 pounds, you want to fly it in. You want to get a crane. The crane brings it in and puts it right down where you want it to, and then you can get it spot on. Well, we couldn't do that because the roof was already on. But we left the back wall temporary. So the back wall we could just take out. And when we rented a forklift. So, forklifts, the ones you can rent from these rental places, they can lift a maximum of 12,000 pounds. And this was 10,000 pounds. But that's 12,000 pounds just lifting straight up and down. Once you begin to extend it out to get into the building, and it had to go quite far in because we had made a concrete plinth, somebody was calling it, to set the Buddha Rupa on inside the building. And it had to go in quite a few, I don't know how many feet, it must have been 6 or 8 feet. And the further it would go in, the more the forks would dip. So we had to figure that out. We also had to figure out how to line it up perfectly straight in the center. Okay, you get a forklift, and it has these pads on it. And you lift it up. And we tried it outside the building first. You lift it up, and you put it back down. And we lifted it up, and it was here, and we put it back down, and it was a couple inches over here. We said, wait a minute, we just lifted right down. So we kept fiddling with the forklift, trying to get it to just bring it up and put it straight back down and come down in the same place. And after much trial and error, we discovered that these pads that are holding it in place, these little arms that come out, if that's not on level ground, if it's tipped a little bit, that is the leveling is not perfect, then it tips a little bit this way, and that affects it. So then we had to level out this area here, so it's perfectly level. That allowed us to lift it up and then put it in and put it down. So it took us a whole day to actually get it into the building. It came in a container, right from the ship. And it was still in the container. And the containers are, I think they're 8 feet tall, and this is 8 feet 4 inches. So it had a sort of tarp over it. It couldn't have a normal top. And so we took the tarp off, and we did have a crane there waiting. to lift it out and put it on the ground. So then we had it on the ground, and we got it in. The first day it took us all day to get it sitting on the concrete behind this plinth there. And so the next day we had to then take it up. And you see, when you got a forklift, the forks are underneath it. So if you put it down on a piece of concrete, well, how are you going to get the forks out? Because all that weight is just sitting, pinching the forks down. So we had to, when we made the concrete plinth, we put channels in it for the forks. So the forks would go right in, and then you could put them down. It would sit on the top, put them down. You could pull them out. So that was one thing we had to do. And forks, they don't have much lateral movement at all. So if it's not perfectly straight, you can't just sort of pull them this side. Right? You can do a little bit. You know, you may get it over an inch or something, but not much. So we had to get it really centered. But everything was concrete. And we wanted to have a wooden, or have it, the appearance that it was sitting on a wooden platform and not on a concrete platform. So we had to make a piece of, we used maple wood, so it's sort of nice light color. And then it had made this oval shape for it. But we had to fit it on there before we put it down, so that the appearance was it was sitting on that. It was quite a complicated process to get it in. But it looks great. Once we've got it finished, and it was a lot of work, but we managed to pull it off. So he was the one that was instrumental in. He was also instrumental in purchasing the land, because it was 215 acres. I mean, it was only 2,000 an acre, say, but those 2,000s add up to a lot of money. And we didn't have any money. So I was here in Virginia during the spring months, and just before the rains began, and made arrangements had somebody negotiating with the owners. But then I went back, and he wanted to know how much do you need? And I said, well, we need most of it. So then, first it was the Katina that year. Everything from the Katina that year went towards it, and then he managed to raise all of the money just in time. There was a closing date in November 28th, and he had it wired over just 2 days ahead of time, right? Just on time, plus what we already had. So without him, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. But maybe only he could have done it too. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much about money, but there was something more spiritual involved.
Did you have much contact with Mongpal Ban?
I did in the earlier years when he was in Sekonokon, or Doida Machedi, but he in later years he'd moved down further south in a couple of locations. In the end, he was not too far from Ratanawan, and that's in Jason.
Kara, yeah.
Kara.
Yeah, branch monastery.
But yeah, I arrived there in 77, and so I think it was 81, my mom came. See, I hadn't seen my mom since, I left in 1974, and ended up in 1975 in India, and ordained as a Samanera there, and then the next year I went to Sri Lanka and ordained full ordination in 76, and in early 77 I went to Thailand, and then reordained in Dhammayut there. So during all that time, I hadn't been home. When I left home, I didn't know I was going to ordain. This is so long ago. It's like a different world. Communications weren't the same. Anything like that. I sort of just disappeared. and they didn't know what happened, except for writing letters, right? But so I was, in communication with them, but the distance felt great. And so in Thailand, I was there ordained until 1984. I went back in 1984. But in the meantime, my mom came in 1981 because she was always worried that I had made a big mistake, that I was brainwashed or something disastrous had happened. My sister said at one point she was ready to get on a plane and fly out and rescue me. But she came, my sister came, and they came up to the Wat, and they stayed in the Wat. And got to meet Lumpdang Mahabua, and he gave them a very nice talk, and that sort of pacified them. But one of the things I did is I took them to Wat Doi to see Luang Pu Ban. Right? We drove over, got some kind of transportation, drove over to see Luang Pu Ban. And that was interesting. And by the time I had enough time, so I was doing the translating. And, I don't know, my mom must have said something like, how much she loves her son. And he said, so what part do you love the most? Is it the arm, or is it the leg, or is it the And she was like, whoa. Whereas Luang Tai didn't do that. He was more, more gentle. But he went through the whole body and asked, "Is that the one? Is that the part?" And she said, "No, you don't understand. You don't understand." So that was a little bit of a shock. But he was also in Canterbury, where Lumpur, that's where his home was, Luang Pu Ban.
Oh, he's from Canterbury.
He's from Canterbury. So he ordained in the same Wat that Lumpur did, Wat Sai Ngam. And Ajahn Goma was his Buddha.
I don't know if did we send you one of these books? We did a translation.
I did. I thought I just saw one. Yeah,
just in case you didn't have it, or if you wanted boxes of them.
Well, I don't know about boxes, but if you send boxes, we
if I sent you boxes, not to carry, but to,
Yeah. Because we do have, somebody sent these to us previously, and these are really good.
Okay, we must have sent a few previously.
And we may have asked for some.
Okay.
It seems to me that we maybe wrote here asking for some.
Yeah, probably. I couldn't remember. That's why I got one out. Or had one go.
Yeah.
Even though he's Dhammayut, I got to cross paths with him about 4 times in Thailand. I never lived there, but always had some memorable experiences. And just he was I thought of him also when he talked about Lumpur Nippon being very powerful. For me, I never met Lumpur Cha and Lumpdang Mahabua. I was only there the day he passed away, actually. I unfortunately never got to grab him in person. But Lumpur Ban was just very powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Luang Pu Suat also. I don't know if you met Luang Pu Suat.
No, unfortunately.
Ajahn Dick Silaratano?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Special.
We went to see his, what do you call it?
Chedi?
Yes,
Stupa?
There's a museum.
Yeah, museum, yeah.
I went to see it. It was big, and then the photo showed Luang Pa going to that.
Yeah, he also considered Luang Tai one of his teachers. He used to come. Cramps.
Can I get you a chair?
No, I just need to let it do its thing, and then it'll be fine.
Ajahn Dick, were you at Luang Ta's with Luang Pa Suchat?
When I arrived, Ajahn Suchat had preceded me, so he was there probably a year before I was. He was already there. And he was one of the few, if not the only time I spoke English. So that was, it was an advantage for me because there was a lot of Dhamma talks given at night, and I didn't understand what was being said. Ajahn Panya would translate for the group. After Luang Ta gave a talk for an hour, he'd say, okay, Ajahn Panya, translate. But he would only give the highlights, what he could remember. And he was, his memory wasn't that great. So, but he'd give 10 minutes out of the hour. He'd give us about 10 minutes. And there was also concern that everyone was still sitting all the time, and Luang Ta was still sitting there waiting for him to finish. And then Luang Ta would talk again. So he probably didn't want to extend it too far. So I asked Ajahn Suchat if he would mind if I came by his kuti after the talk, and he could give me a more detailed explanation. So he very kindly did that for quite a while. But at some point he said, I kind of like to go back and do my own practice after the talk. Can't we do this in the morning, maybe after the meal? So we started doing it in the morning after the meal. But he was translating Luang Ta's talks into English. He translated the Paripada, the whole Paripada into English. And then he did those forest asanas, those talks. So he did quite a lot.
And you were Luang Ta Mahabua's upatak for quite some time. I can't recall exactly how long, but...
Yeah, it was 17 years.
17 years. Would you reflect on, maybe the beginning of that time, like what some of the learning curve was with that?
Big learning curve, I was probably fairly typical of most Westerners who, went to Thailand ordained because I wanted to do meditation. And the meditation the results were good enough so that I felt that I had a talent for it, right? So I wanted to spend as much time as I could. So I tend to be somewhat introverted and not do any more than I actually had to do when, doing call doing duties and doing things that were required. And so, long story short, one morning, I'd probably been there 6 months, not more. And before Pindapat every morning, all the monks would come down early, they'd clean up, sweep up, scrub the floor, set out all the seats, get it ready. And after that, Luang Ta would come. And usually he'd come a little bit early, and he'd give a talk, just standing there. Everybody standing waiting. And he would give some instructions, he'd give a talk before we all put our robes on and went out. And because I didn't understand Thai, I just sort of stand there with my eyes closed and write light. And he said things seemed to be really nice, and I wasn't paying much attention to. Suddenly, he told Ajahn Panya, hey, tell Dick there to start working at my kuti, starting tomorrow. And I sort of woke up and it was going on. So he obviously saw that I needed some. And so I did. I went over the neck, but it was all new to me. There were actually a couple of Western monks already doing that duty. Ian, I don't know if you've ever heard of Ian Ariasiko. He was an English monk who now lives in Australia, but he just wrote some time ago. He was doing it, so I started working with them. And we all wanted to do practice. So two of us were enough to do that job. So one of us usually fasting, and the other two were working. One of the families going to be sort of rotated like that. But yeah, that changed my whole view of what was and what I was how I was supposed to fit into it. And not sure where to start. I didn't have a language, so I had to try to figure out, and I didn't think language was important, like most Western monks that were there. I mean, it's like, I didn't come here to learn language, I came here to meditate, that's where I spent time. And I was never very good at languages anyway. But now, you already respect Longtha, and like everyone else, and you know this is really special opportunity, and so you're really trying hard. And he's giving you instructions, and you don't know what he's saying, and you don't want to make a mistake. It's time to sort of, and he'd been to England with Champagne, and he'd learned a few phrases in English, so he'd say them, and I didn't dare speak in English, because I figured he's not going to understand what I say. I mean, I'd be able to figure out what he's saying, but if I just start talking in English, he's not going to understand. So I was trying really hard to learn the Thai, to try to fit into that situation. And but it was lots of detail. It was lots of little things, doing every little thing correctly, and observing. Particularly observing him, so observing, how he did things, how he wanted things done, how he behaved in certain situations. So to kind of like a parent, when you're a child growing up, you're watching your parents and you're trying to figure out how to become like them. So everything mattered, and that was the sort of rather intense mindfulness practice, to pay attention to everything, because he would keep pointing out the mistakes you made were mental mistakes. You could inadvertently do something wrong, but if your heart was in it and you just didn't understand yet what was right, but you were willing to be told, right? You were willing to be instructed. Then he would. But if he knew you were mindful enough not to make that mistake, that you'd made it before, and now you're making it a second time or a third time, then he would jump, right? So you had to be on your game. Whenever you walked into his study, then at least for that period of time, you had to be as perfectly mindful as possible. And if you weren't, you would hear about it. But not only mindful, but you had to have the right attitude. Your thinking had to be right. Your whole attention had to be correct. So if things were coming up in you that were defilement oriented or whatever, then he would jump on. Sometimes you didn't realize why he was getting at scolding you, because he was quite fierce. Yeah. So it made, again, going back to simple tasks and keep doing them over and doing them right, and being willing to follow his lead, because the way he wanted things done didn't always make sense to me. I think I could do it better. Matter of fact, I was sure I could do it better. And that made no difference at all. He wanted it done like that, and and if you didn't do it like that, then he would force you to do it. Like, this is the way you want it done. And sometimes it would just make my life a lot more difficult, and I didn't want to do it because it was an easy way to do it. Right? And sometimes it just seemed that logically must be a better way than this sort of thing. But it was a part of the training. So it was not that one way was better than the other. It was that where he saw I had resistance to, that was the way we had to do it, right? So anytime I showed resistance, you got to do it that way. That's the only way to do it, right? Until you just gave up and said, okay, and then gave in, right? So a lot of that. And in some ways, it was like going back into this sort of medieval community where things were done in a different way than anything I'd ever seen before, right? I mean, a lot of linear rules are like that too, but just the way things, the simplicity of everything. There was no electricity, only candlelight. You had to pump water at the well and run it around. Like you're scrubbing the floor with coconut husks. Endless things which are just from a different age. And so you walk into this and you've left the world that you knew behind, and you have to learn a whole new way of behaving until it becomes habitual, becomes natural. And you feel, yeah, this all makes sense now after you've gone through it. But beginning, it's kind of hard to not to think of, we have better ways of doing these things now, right? So a lot of it's just changing your, thinking patterns, the way you think, the way you react, and being open to new ideas and new ways of doing things.
Did you find the resistance actually fell away at a certain point?
Little by little. I don't think it just falls away at a certain point. It gradually, with certain things, and the more things that places where the resistance falls away, the more open it becomes. But there's a lot in there. A lot of resistance inside. It goes deep. But it's just being with someone constantly, because I would go 3 or 4 times a day to his good to do various things. And, always being on your guard when you're there, and knowing what he expected. And the other thing is that once you learned how to do it this way, and that's what he expected, that's when you change it and start doing it another way. And you're not, hey, wait a minute, what happened here? And so, and he would force you to think of it a different way, from a different perspective, right? Doing the same thing in a different way. And that became the standard then. This was no longer the standard. So he kept changing things around. And just to see how I would react, right? And so it's like any kind of experience. You get a feel for what's important and what isn't important. If he changes something, is that a change that he wants to keep, from now on, or is that just something he just happened to put down there, but it really belongs over here where it always did, right? How do you make that judgment if you leave it there and then he scolds you because you didn't put it back? Or you put it back and he scolds you because you didn't leave it where it was, right? So it's kind of, you learn to think how he thinks. So he's basically training my mind to think the way he thinks. And it takes years, right? But eventually I begin to think like he thinks. And it has its own logic to it, right? But it's a flexible kind of logic too. So it comes from a lot of different perspectives.
So, well, it's almost 2:00, so.
Oh yeah. I'm 55. Are we on a time?
We probably
I think with the next 5 minutes we could probably take.
I was just going to Ajahn Panya. Ajahn Panya had a different way of thinking and a different way of training the mind to thinking. So between the two of them, I learned quite a few different perspectives on that. But that's for another day.
Maybe if we have permission to visit you sometime.
You always have permission to visit. Yeah. Everyone in this room. It's only, 3,000 miles away.
Some offerings.
Oh, wow.
This is local coffee. They've been winning all these awards as of late, so I thought to offer you some for Forest on that.
13th son in Ethiopia. Mexico. Job.
They roast it locally. So
Okay, maybe you can.
yes, quite good.
We don't need the tray. You won't offer the tray.
You can just take the coffee. The tray's probably too bulky for you.
For
your
our
bag.
trip back, yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for taking the time and just spending time with us, and
Well, thank you for having me.
hope to keep the connection going.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very, very helpful for us. We've had been a bit bereft of having John's visiting the last 3 years, as you know.
Oh
so,
yeah, with COVID and all of that.
So it's like, like Ajahn Dick was supposed to come, and then we were kind of left high and dry. So it's very, very helpful. So sadhu.
Mm.